Hey love bugs, welcome back to another Tarot Lover Reviews. Today we are taking a look at the Archangel Power Tarot cards created by, I believe it's Radley, and I apologize if I'm not saying it correctly, Radley Valentine. So if you've heard of this tarot deck or you haven't heard of this tarot deck, hopefully this review and the flip through that comes afterwards helps you to decide on whether or not this tarot deck is right for you. Now, if you want to skip straight to the flip through, you can look down in my description. I break down all the suits into chapters to make it easier for you to locate exactly where in the flip through you would like to start. But right now, we are going to talk about the packaging. We are going to talk about the guidebook, and we are going to talk about the cards, card stock, card size, imagery, the backs of the cards, the naming convention, everything. So if you're interested in the details, stick around. Otherwise, feel free to head on over to the flip through. So let's go ahead and start off with the packaging. So you saw the front part of the box. Now, the publisher for this tarot deck is Hay House. So you should be able to go to their website and purchase this tarot deck. I actually got this one from a metaphysical shop that was nearby me. So yeah, and the box opens like so. Here is the interior of the box. Love the fact you will hear me talk about this in all of my videos. I appreciate when the box that the tarot deck comes in is thick. Like this is thick, because I know if I keep the tarot cards in this box and it accidentally falls to the floor, my cards will not be damaged because the box takes the brunt of the force. Yes, it does kind of dent your packaging, but it's better than, damaging your tarot cards. So that is the packaging there. Let's talk about the guidebook. So this is what the guidebook looks like. Okay. And it's a pretty thick guidebook. I really appreciate that. I feel like when the guidebook's a little bit thicker, you can expect more information to be provided, whether that's, how the creator of the tarot deck came to create this tarot deck, more information about tarot and its background. I always find that very interesting to hear from other people's perspectives. They all kind of flow around the same thing, but some people provide more information that I didn't know before. So there's that. And then, of course, there's more information about each of the cards, typically within a guidebook. Now, with this particular guidebook, they do have tarot spreads, which you know me, I am always happy to see tarot spreads being provided within the guidebook for a tarot deck, because if you are a brand new tarot reader on their tarot journey, it really helps to have one handy in the guidebook. Yes, you can look online and you can find a tarot spread, but when you want something readily available, it's nice to have it in the guidebook. So you have one for a 3-card spread, and it does kind of, yeah. So you have a 3-card spread right here, and then you have the Celtic cross here. So you have those two available. That's typical in most guidebooks. They will normally have the Celtic cross included within their guidebook. Some of them just do 3-card spreads. Some tarot creators will create their own tarot spreads that are themed after their tarot deck. So either way, it's always wonderful to be able to find a tarot spread within the guidebook. Now let's go ahead and talk about the cards. So I'm going to kind of flip through this so you guys can get an idea of what you're going to see within the guidebook. So you will get a picture of the card within the guidebook. It is on the smaller side, and it is not in color, but it's the fact that you do have a picture of that card that you can reference as you are reading the description of that particular card. Now, as far as the description, with the major arcana, you do get a little bit more information than you do with the minor arcana in this particular guidebook, which is typical, actually. Some tarot creators will provide more information on the major arcana than the minor arcana because, it's it's a pretty major card, pun intended. But yeah, so pretty much throughout the entire book, you have a description of the card and then an additional meanings of that particular card. In the minor arcana, what they have done is kind of broken out the sections. So let me give you guys an example. So we have this card here. You have a description here, and then it goes over to the second page. You have that additional meanings for that card, and then a little excerpt about that particular angel that card is on. Now, when you get into the minor arcana, you have something similar, but it's kind of separated more. So you have the situation section, then you have a people section, and then the additional meanings of this card. So I like the fact that they break things down and make it more manageable to understand what that card is about. Now, there is additional information on the cards themselves, which we'll look at a little bit later, that you can also reference to as well. This is just additional information you can look at if you don't feel like what is on the cards currently don't help you to really understand that card. So that is the guidebook. Let's talk about the cards. So actually, I was going to go into the whole naming convention and the imagery, and I apologize, you guys, if you hear my dog in the background. He saw a cat. He's trying to catch him. So if you hear barking, that is why. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the size, the cardstock, the backing of the cards. So this is what the back looks like. Okay. And these represent the suits, all the suits within this particular tarot deck. Okay, so each of them are colored a specific way, and I'll explain a little bit more how that kind of ties into everything. But that is the back, and as you can see, it is glossy, gloss finish. If you've seen my videos, if you've seen most of my videos, I talk about how I don't really like glossy cards because I don't like how they slip around all over the place. If you don't necessarily have a good handle on the cards, I try to have a good handle on the cards, but sometimes they start to slide and slip away. So it's just kind of like, so I don't necessarily prefer gloss finish, but I mean, if you like the deck, then you just learn to compromise, right? So it is gloss finish. Let's talk about the cardstock. Now, actually, let me back up and talk about the size of the card, because the size of the card plays into the cardstock. So as you can see, this card is larger than your typical tarot card. So I have a standard Rider-Waite-Smith tarot card here for comparison, and I am going to show you when I corner that up just how big of a difference the size is to these cards, okay? Goodness gracious. So that's how you can tell how large the cards are in this particular deck, okay? That brings me to the cardstock. Because the cards are larger than your typical tarot deck, the cardstock is going to be a little bit thicker to make up for that extra space, that extra, the word escapes me, but the extra paper it needs more structure, right? It needs that extra thickness in order to just not fold like thin paper, right? So the cards are going to be a little bit on the thicker side for sure. Now, a way that I can explain this visually is when the deck is thicker, you have, or at least I do, I don't know about you guys, but I have a hard time stretching my fingers so that I can hold it in a way that I can do that riffle shuffle or that poker style shuffle. And if you cannot bend the cards just to be able to weave the cards into each other, That's how you know you have a thick cardstock. That's how you know. You do not have to, you do not have to shuffle. I totally just went blank there. You don't have to shuffle your cards in that manner. You do not have to shuffle your cards in that manner. You can shuffle it, you know, the under over method if you wanted to. You can put it all over the place and just kind of swish it around and bring them together so that you have your deck shuffled. Or if you are fine with it, you can bend the deck so that you can shuffle in that riffle shuffle. I never have a preferred shuffling method. I adjust based off of the cardstock of that deck that I am using. So if it's this particular deck and I wanted to shuffle it, I would do that under over method instead of the riffle shuffle, because I don't like bending my tarot decks too much to where it ruins the cardstock and warps it. Yes, it shows that you've used it a lot and there's wear and tear and all that good stuff, but I like to keep my tarot decks in a preferably good condition. I know it's inevitable, you know, cards are going to a little bit bend, you know, but I try to keep my tarot decks as good as possible, or as flat as possible. So that is the cardstock. I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how thick this particular tarot deck is. Let's talk about the naming convention and the imagery within this tarot deck. So when I get into this, I love to talk about the differences, the comparison between the Rider-Waite-Smith and this particular tarot deck that I am reviewing. This gives you an idea of how similar or how different each of these cards, each of these decks are. And then that gives you an idea of whether or not this is something that you want to purchase, because not everyone wants to steer away from the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. Not everyone likes the idea of changing the suit names from the typical, you know, naming convention. So this is why I do what I do in this case. I always find that it's very important to have this idea, because if you're anything like me or anyone like me, I do not like returning tarot decks. I feel like I'm returning a pet. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I try to be cautious and aware of what tarot decks I get. Some of them I get just because I want them as part of my collection, but for the most part, I try to be cautious of what I buy because I would like to utilize it a lot. I utilize all of my tarot decks. I shuffle through them, pun intended, every day so that I use something different, so that none of my tarot decks feel stagnant, because they will let me know if it's been a while since I've used them. That is another story for next time. But yeah, that is why I go over this particular comparison at this point of the video. So let's talk about the naming convention. So with the naming convention, we are talking about all the major arcana and then the minor arcana suits, which is Pentacles, Cups, Wands, and Swords, based off of the Rider-Waite-Smith system, right? With that, the naming convention is different for the minor arcana. Okay, I'm going to start with the minor arcana. Typically, I start with the major, but let's start with the minor. So with the minor arcana, all of them are different. Okay, they are all based off of angels, which makes sense. So it makes sense that it would be based off of angels because this is an Archangel tarot deck. So each suit is named after a particular angel. So you have Michael, which is in blue. Okay, so Michael is in blue, and that stands for swords. So the suit of swords, the suit of air. Okay. Then you have Gabriel in this earth tone color. Okay. Earth tone. And it is in the cardinal directions. Okay. Air, water, wands, or air, water, fire, earth. Is that right? I think that's right. I might be looking at this differently, but we'll just go with it. I could be wrong. Okay. I'm not saying it's right. That's what popped into my head. I apologize. But yeah, let's get back on track, shall we? So Gabriel is fire. Okay. For wands. Then you have Raphael, green for water. Okay. And then you have, I believe it's Ariel. I'm not sure. I apologize. I don't know all my angels' names, but you have Ariel for Pentacles, and that is in pink. Okay. Then for your major arcana cards, you have that, if I can have this in the right place, you have that in purple. So major arcana will be in purple. Another thing, let's see, do I want to, naming convention, because that's what we're still on. Each of the cards has a saying, a phrase, a couple of sentences at the bottom to help you understand what that card is. Okay, so that is always helpful to have, especially if you're new to tarot and you love angels. This is your tarot deck, right? So that is the major arcana when it comes to the naming convention. The court cards are the same, right? The pages, knights, queens, and kings, those are all the same. They stayed the same naming. It's just the suit of the card that changes. Now, let's talk about the major arcana. So there are several cards that are different in this deck. They are renamed differently within the major arcana. So I'm going to go ahead and show you all of them. I think I have enough time. Let's go ahead and show you all of them. So the Fool is Leap of Faith. The Hierophant is Divine Guidance. The Hermit, I had to think about that, Epiphany. You have the Hanged Man, which is Perspective. You have Temperance, which is Peace. Solutions, and this is where I kind of feel like I go off, because I always get these confused. Anyways, I'm just going to show you all of these. I get really confused when they're not the numbers, and trying to associate the numbers at this point for the major arcana. I totally blank out at what the card's original name is on these ones. So number 14 is Solutions. I always get it confused with the Devil, the Tower. I always get those mixed up on their numbers. It's weird. Number 15, Decisions. Number 16, Change Your Life, which I think is the Tower. Yes, it is. It's the Tower card, because it comes before the Star card, which is my card, and that's number 17. So I know this one is the Tower card. So this means this one is the Devil. This one's the Devil. This one's the Tower card. Okay, we're back on track. And then you have Judgment for New Beginnings. So those are the differences with the name. Apologize, it took me a second there. But yeah, that is the naming convention. So let's talk about the imagery. So as you saw in these cards, the imagery is not exactly like the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, but there are similarities to the imagery, to the Rider-Waite. You still get the feeling, the idea when you look at the characters within the cards, the scenery in the cards, what the characters are doing in the cards, gives you that indication of what that particular card is for the most part. Not all the cards do that, as you saw me struggling with some of those major arcana cards. But they're not going to be exactly like the Rider-Waite Smith tarot cards. So if you are heavily relying on the imagery of the RWS tarot deck, then this particular tarot deck might take you some time in getting used to. Same thing with the naming convention. If you are if you love the RWS system, the naming convention, the imagery, you may have a hard time with this tarot deck simply because the suit names are changed. So it does take some time to kind of get used to. I purchased this tarot deck probably 4 days ago, and it's still taking me some time to get used to it. So yeah, but I did want to wait a few days, utilize the tarot deck, and get a better idea of how I feel about it so that I can do this particular review. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much it. As far as pain points, I think it's the card size and the card stock. Card stock comes with the fact that the card size is so large and it makes it harder to shuffle. And then another thing, and this is just my thing, I'm not so into angels when it comes to my tarot decks. It's just something that I don't really lean towards when I'm looking for a tarot deck. It's not something that is like, this one has angels, I want it. This is just me, guys. So this wasn't something that I wanted to purchase right away, but I was talking to my aunt while I was in the metaphysical store, and I kept coming back to this tarot deck. And something told me that this particular tarot deck can help her with whatever was going on in her life at that moment. So I ended up purchasing it. I told her what I was feeling about this tarot deck. I purchased it. I did a reading for her, and it was like perfect. It spoke to her, and I think it's because of the angels. It gave her that sense of comfort. It gave her something to relate to. I don't know. I just think that was one of the main reasons why I gravitated towards this tarot deck, is when someone is in need of healing, that a tarot deck that depicts healing energy and healing vibes and can tell you the things that need to be said in a healing way, even though sometimes we don't want to hear some of these things, it makes a big difference. So yeah. All right, guys. So without further ado, here is the flip through. Enjoy, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.